Maya took a deep breath before pushing open the heavy doors of Westfield High School. The hallway stretched out in front of her like a maze, filled with students laughing, shouting, and catching up after summer break. She clutched her backpack straps a little tighter. This was her fourth school in 3 years, and starting over never got easier. At 15, Maya had learned to read a room quickly. She noticed the groups huddled by the lockers, the couples holding hands near the water fountain, and the athletes wearing their varsity jackets like badges of honor. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere. Everyone except her. Her father had promised this time would be different. They'd moved to this quiet Connecticut suburb specifically so she could have a normal teenage experience. No paparazzi, no Hollywood drama, just regular high school life. That's why she decided to introduce herself as Maya Richardson, using her birth surname instead of her adoptive father's famous last name. She wanted people to know her for who she was, not whose daughter she happened to be. Maya found her locker and started organizing her books. A girl with bright red hair at the next locker smiled at her. "First day? That obvious?" Maya smiled back. "Only because I haven't seen you before and I know pretty much everyone. I'm Riley." "Maya, nice to meet you." They chatted for a few minutes about teachers and which classes to avoid. Riley seemed genuinely friendly, and Maya felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this school really would be different. Her first 2 periods went smoothly enough. Math and history passed without incident. But third period English was when everything changed. Maya walked into the classroom and immediately felt eyes on her. She was one of only 3 black students in the room, and the stares made her hyper-aware of every step she took to her seat. The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was an energetic woman in her 50s who clearly loved literature. She dove right into discussing Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, asking complex questions about themes and character motivation. Maya had always been good at English. Reading was her escape, her way of traveling to different worlds when real life got complicated. When Mrs. Patterson asked about the role of fate versus free will in the play, the room fell silent. Maya raised her hand slowly. "Yes, Maya, is it? Go ahead. I think Shakespeare was showing us that both matter. The characters make choices, but they're also trapped by their family's expectations and society's rules. It's like they're free but not really free. They can choose, but their choices are limited by forces bigger than them." Mrs. Patterson's face lit up. "Excellent analysis. That's exactly the kind of critical thinking we need in this class." Maya felt a warm glow of satisfaction, until she noticed the boy 3 seats over glaring at her. He was tall, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a varsity jacket that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. His jaw was clenched and his blue eyes were cold. After class, as Maya gathered her books, she overheard him talking to his friends near the door. "Who does she think she is? Showing off on the first day?" "Come on, Brandon, she just answered a question," one of his friends said half-heartedly. "Whatever. I don't like her vibe." Maya's stomach tightened. She'd dealt with guys like Brandon before, guys who needed to be the smartest person in the room, who saw kindness as weakness and intelligence in others as a personal attack. She hoped he'd just forget about her. She should have known better. As Maya walked down the hallway toward her next class, Brandon suddenly appeared beside her. Before she could react, he shouldered past her hard, sending her books and notebooks flying across the floor. Paper scattered everywhere. Students nearby stopped to watch. "Oops. Sorry, didn't see you there," Brandon said with a smirk that made it clear he'd done it on purpose. His 3 friends laughed on cue like a trained audience. Maya knelt down to gather her things, her face burning. A few students walked right past her scattered belongings without helping. One boy even stepped on her English paper, leaving a dirty footprint. Only Riley rushed over to help pick up the books. "Are you okay?" "Brandon's such a jerk," Riley whispered. "I'm fine," Maya said quietly, even though she wasn't. Her hands were shaking slightly as she shoved papers back into her folders. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, watching to see how she'd react. She wanted to scream at Brandon. She wanted to tell him exactly what she thought of bullies who picked on people to make themselves feel powerful. But she'd learned that sometimes the best response was no response at all. Her father had taught her that anger could be a tool, but only if you controlled it instead of letting it control you. Maya stood up, brushed off her jeans, and walked away without looking back at Brandon. She heard him laugh behind her, a sound that made her skin crawl. The rest of the day was more of the same. In the cafeteria, Brandon made loud comments about her hair when she walked past his table. "Nice braids. Did you get those done at the zoo?" His friends erupted in laughter. Maya kept walking, found an empty table in the corner and ate her lunch alone. In gym class, Brandon accidentally hit her with a basketball during a scrimmage. The coach barely noticed. After school, Maya saw him pointing at her and whispering to his friends in the parking lot. They all stared and laughed. By the time Maya got home, she was exhausted. Not from the classes or the homework, but from the constant vigilance. From having to hold her head high while someone tried to tear her down. From pretending that words and actions didn't hurt when they absolutely did. Her father's car was already in the driveway. He was between filming projects, which meant he was home more than usual. Maya found him in the kitchen making his famous protein smoothies. "Hey, sweetheart, how was the first day?" he asked, his deep voice warm with genuine interest. "It was fine," Maya said automatically. Vin turned to look at her, his expression sharpening. He'd always been able to read her like a book. "Maya, how was it really?" She wanted to tell him everything. About Brandon, about the harassment, about feeling alone in a crowded hallway. But she also didn't want to be that girl who ran to her famous father every time life got hard. She wanted to handle her own problems. Besides, what would he even do? Show up at school and intimidate a 16-year-old kid? That would only make things worse, just normal first-day stuff. New school, new people. You know how it is. Vin studied her face for a long moment, and Maya could tell he didn't quite believe her. But he also respected her need for independence. "Okay, but you know I'm here if you need anything, right? Anything at all." "I know, Dad, I got this." She headed upstairs to her room and closed the door. Then she sat on her bed and finally let herself feel everything she'd been holding in all day. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't cry, not over someone like Brandon. Maya pulled out her laptop and started searching for information about Westfield High's bullying policies. If Brandon kept this up, she'd go through the proper channels. She'd report it to teachers, to counselors, to administrators. She'd do everything by the book. What Maya didn't know was that Brandon wasn't the type to stop. And what Brandon didn't know was that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. 3 weeks had passed since Maya's first day at Westfield High, and things had only gotten worse. Brandon wasn't the type of bully who would throw a punch and move on. No, his cruelty was more calculated, more persistent. He was the kind who made sure you felt small every single day. It started with the little things, comments in the hallway that were just loud enough for Maya to hear. "Must be nice getting into advanced classes because of diversity quotas." His friends would snicker and Maya would keep walking, her nails digging into her palms. Then came the social media harassment. Someone created a fake Instagram account using a photo they'd taken of Maya without her permission. The account posted mean-spirited memes and cruel jokes. Maya reported it and the account got taken down, but another one popped up 2 days later. She knew it was Brandon and his crew, but she couldn't prove it. In the cafeteria one afternoon, Maya was carrying her lunch tray when Brandon stuck his foot out. She saw it just in time and stepped over it, but the near miss made her stumble. Her chocolate milk tipped over, spilling across her tray and onto her white sneakers. "Wow, clumsy much?" Brandon said loudly. The tables around them erupted in laughter. Maya set her tray down at the nearest table, her appetite completely gone. Riley came over and sat with her, offering napkins and sympathy, but Maya barely heard her. She was tired, so incredibly tired of this constant battle. That night, Maya made a decision. She would go to the school counselor and file an official complaint. Her father had raised her to believe in systems and doing things the right way, so that's exactly what she'd do. The next morning, Maya sat in the counselor's office explaining everything to Mr. Chen. He listened patiently, taking notes, nodding sympathetically. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "I'm really sorry you're going through this, Maya. Bullying is something we take very seriously here at Westfield. I'll speak with Brandon and his parents and we'll get this sorted out." Maya felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Finally, an adult was taking action. But 2 days later, nothing had changed. Brandon was still harassing her, still making comments, still making her life miserable. If anything, he seemed angrier, more determined. Maya saw Mr. Chen in the hallway and asked him what happened. "I spoke with Brandon and his father," Mr. Chen said quietly. "Brandon denied everything and his father was quite defensive. But I've documented your complaint and we're monitoring the situation." Monitoring the situation. The words felt hollow. Maya realized that Brandon's father, who apparently donated huge amounts of money to the school's athletic programs and building funds, had probably made things very difficult for Mr. Chen. Money talked, and it was talking louder than her complaints. The breaking point came 3 weeks later on a cold October afternoon. Maya had stayed after school to work on a project in the library. By the time she finished, most students had left. She walked out to the parking lot, her backpack heavy with books, thinking about the essay she needed to finish that night. That's when she saw them. Brandon and 3 of his friends were leaning against a car near the student lot exit. When they spotted her, Brandon's face lit up with that cruel smile she'd come to recognize. Well, look who it is, Brandon said, pushing off from the car. His friends formed a loose semicircle, blocking her path. Maya's heart started racing, but she kept her voice steady. I need to get past it. We're just talking. You got a problem with talking? Brandon pulled out his phone. Actually, let's make this interesting. I want to show everyone what you're really like. He started recording. Maya felt her stomach drop. She knew whatever happened next, Brandon would edit it to make her look bad. That's how bullies like him operated. They created situations where you couldn't win. Come on, tell us. How does it feel being the diversity hire of Westfield High? We all know you didn't get into those advanced classes on merit. Maya's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct told her to defend herself, to yell back, to push past them. But she also knew that's exactly what Brandon wanted. He wanted her to lose control on camera. I earned my place here just like everyone else, Maya said quietly, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. Oh, she speaks. Say more. Tell us about where you're really from. Tell us about your people. Brandon's voice dripped with mockery, and his friends laughed on cue. Before Maya could respond, she heard footsteps. Mrs. Patterson, her English teacher, came around the corner carrying a stack of papers. What's going on here? Brandon immediately pocketed his phone. His whole demeanor changed, his expression shifting to innocent confusion. Nothing, Mrs. Patterson, just talking. Maya, are you all right? Mrs. Patterson asked, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. I'm fine, Maya said, even though her heart was still pounding. I was just leaving. Mrs. Patterson walked Maya to her car and Brandon and his friends dispersed. But Maya knew the video was already recorded, and she knew Brandon well enough to know he'd use it somehow. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept checking her phone, waiting for the video to appear on social media. Around midnight, it finally did. Brandon had posted a carefully edited clip on his Instagram story. The video started with Maya saying, I earned my place here, but Brandon had cut out his taunts and racist comments. He'd added a caption, when you can't take a joke, so aggressive for no reason. Within an hour, the video had been viewed by half the school. Comments poured in. Some defended Maya, but many others mocked her or called her sensitive. The anxiety Maya had been holding back for weeks finally crashed over her like a wave. She went downstairs. It was past 1 a.m, but she knew her father would still be up. He was a night owl, usually reading scripts or working out in the home gym. She found him in his office reviewing some paperwork. Dad, she said from the doorway, and her voice cracked on that single word. Vin looked up immediately. In 3 long strides, he crossed the room and pulled her into a hug. What happened? And Maya told him everything. About Brandon's harassment over the past month. About the school's empty promises. About the parking lot confrontation and the edited video that was now spreading across social media. She showed him the comments, the fake accounts, all of it. As she talked, Maya watched her father's expression change. His jaw tightened. His eyes went dark. She could feel the tension radiating from him, the barely controlled anger. But when he spoke, his voice was calm. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I wanted to handle it myself. I wanted to do it the right way, through the school, like a normal person, not like the daughter of someone famous. Vin pulled back and looked at her. Maya, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And there's nothing normal about what this boy is doing to you. This is harassment. This is racism. And it stops now. What are you going to do? I'm going to make some calls. And tomorrow morning I'm coming to your school. He pulled out his phone. But first I'm calling our lawyer. Maya felt relief flood through her, mixed with worry. She didn't want to be that girl whose famous father had to fight her battles. But she was also exhausted from fighting alone. Dad, what if this makes things worse? Vin looked at her with absolute certainty. It won't, trust me. Brandon thinks he's untouchable because his father has money and influence. He's about to learn that there are some things money can't protect you from, like consequences. That night, while Maya finally slept, Vin made a series of phone calls. To his lawyer, to a private investigator who could document everything Brandon had posted online, to his publicist just in case this became a media situation, and to the school district superintendent requesting an emergency meeting. Brandon had no idea what was coming. But he was about to find out that the quiet girl he'd been tormenting wasn't as alone as he thought, and the consequences of his actions were about to become very, very real. Maya woke up the next morning to find her father already dressed in dark jeans and a black t-shirt. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his lawyer, a sharp-looking woman named Patricia who had worked with their family for years. Folders and printouts were spread across the table. "Morning, sweetheart," Vin said. "We're going to school together today." Maya's stomach did a nervous flip. Part of her felt relieved. Another part worried about what would happen when Vin Diesel showed up at Westfield High. Her private life was about to become very public. They arrived at school at 7:30 before most students. Maya had never seen the parking lot so empty. As they walked toward the main entrance, she noticed her father's purposeful stride, the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. This was the man who'd starred in action movies, who'd faced down fictional villains on screen. But right now he was just a father protecting his daughter. The secretary in the main office looked up from her computer and her jaw literally dropped. "Oh my God, I'm Maya Richardson's father," Vin said calmly. "I have a meeting with Principal Davis, the school counselor, and I believe the district superintendent should be arriving shortly." Word spread through the school faster than wildfire. By first period, every student at Westfield High knew that Maya Richardson was Vin Diesel's adopted daughter. The girl Brandon had been harassing for a month was connected to one of Hollywood's biggest action stars. Phones buzzed with texts and social media updates. The hallways hummed with whispered conversations. In the principal's office, things were tense. Principal Davis, a thin man in his 50s who always looked slightly overwhelmed, sat behind his desk. Mr. Chen, the counselor, sat to his left. The district superintendent, Mrs. Flores, had driven in from the main office and occupied a chair near the window. Brandon had been called in with his parents. Brandon's father, Richard Mitchell, was exactly what Maya expected. Expensive suit, confident posture, the kind of man who was used to getting his way. His mother, Catherine, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Brandon himself sat slouched in his chair, trying to look bored, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders. Patricia, Vin's lawyer, opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Thank you all for meeting on such short notice. We're here to discuss a serious pattern of harassment and discriminatory behavior that my client's daughter has endured over the past month." Richard Mitchell leaned forward. "Now wait just a minute. My son is a good kid. If there was some misunderstanding between teenagers, I'm sure we can work it out without all this drama." "This isn't a misunderstanding," Patricia said coldly. She opened the folder and began laying out printed screenshots. Social media posts. The fake Instagram accounts. Messages from students who had witnessed Brandon's behavior. The edited video from the parking lot, along with witness statements about what really happened. "We also have the original unedited footage from that parking lot incident," Patricia continued. "Obtained from the school's security cameras, which we requested through a formal legal channel yesterday evening." Brandon's confident facade cracked. His eyes widened slightly. He clearly hadn't thought about security cameras. Patricia played the security footage on her laptop. The audio was faint but clear enough. Everyone in the room heard Brandon's taunts, his racist comments, the way he and his friends had surrounded Maya. They watched as Mrs. Patterson arrived and Brandon instantly changed his behavior. The room fell silent. Vin had been quiet until now, letting his lawyer handle the facts. But now he spoke, his voice low and controlled. "My daughter came to this school hoping for a normal experience. She didn't tell anyone who her family was because she wanted to be judged on her own merit. She earned her place in those advanced classes. She followed every rule. And when your son started harassing her, she did exactly what she was supposed to do. She reported it to the counselor." He turned to look at Mr. Chen, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "But nothing happened," Vin continued, "because apparently Brandon's father donates a lot of money to this school. And that money bought something it shouldn't have. It bought immunity from consequences. Richard Mitchell's face turned red. Now you listen here. My son made a mistake maybe, but boys will be boys. This doesn't need to become some federal case. Boys will be boys? Vin's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. Your son committed harassment. He created a hostile environment based on race. In some jurisdictions, what he did could be investigated as a hate crime. He filmed and distributed edited footage to defame my daughter. That's not boys being boys. That's targeted harassment with racist overtones. Patricia picked up where Vin left off. We have documentation of every incident. We have witnesses. We have the security footage. And we have a very clear case for a civil lawsuit against Brandon, his parents for failing to supervise him, and potentially the school district for failing to protect Maya, despite her formal complaints. Mrs. Flores, the superintendent, looked extremely uncomfortable. A lawsuit against the district was the last thing she needed. Mr. Diesel, I assure you we take these allegations very seriously. With respect, Superintendent, my daughter filed a formal complaint 3 weeks ago and nothing was done. The only reason we're all sitting here now is because I have the resources to hire lawyers and investigators. What about the students who don't have those resources? How are they supposed to get justice? The question hung in the air. No one had a good answer. Brandon's mother finally spoke, her voice shaky. Brandon, is all of this true? Brandon stared at his hands. For the first time, he looked small. Not like the confident bully who ruled the junior class, but like a scared teenager who realized he'd gone too far. Yeah, it's true. The admission seemed to drain all the fight out of Richard Mitchell. He sat back in his chair looking at his son with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe, or shock that his money couldn't fix this. Patricia laid out the terms. Here's what's going to happen. Brandon will face serious disciplinary action from the school. Suspension at minimum. He will also be enrolled in mandatory counseling to address his behavior. He will issue a public apology to Maya, unedited and genuine. He will be removed from any leadership positions or sports teams for a significant period. Furthermore, she continued, the school district will implement a comprehensive anti-bullying program with real teeth. Not just posters and assemblies, but actual policies with actual consequences. There will be training for staff on how to handle harassment complaints, especially those involving racial discrimination. And if any retaliation occurs against Maya, from Brandon or anyone else, we'll revisit the lawsuit option. Are we clear? Principal Davis nodded quickly. Mrs. Flores agreed. Richard Mitchell, all his bluster gone, simply said, yes. Vin turned to Brandon directly. The teenager couldn't meet his eyes. Do you know why I'm really here, Brandon? It's not because I'm famous. It's not because I have money or lawyers. I'm here because my daughter is brave enough to stand up for herself, but smart enough to know when she needs help. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. You targeted her because you thought she was alone. You thought she was an easy victim. You were wrong. But here's what I want you to understand. Every person you see, every person you meet, they have people who love them. They have people who would go to war for them. Maya just happens to have a father who has the resources to make sure justice actually happens. That doesn't make her worth more than anyone else. It makes her lucky, and it makes you very, very unlucky that you chose her. Brandon finally looked up, and Maya saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Shame. Real, genuine shame. The meeting ended with agreements signed and consequences outlined. As Maya and her father walked out of the office, students lined the hallways staring. Some looked shocked. Others looked guilty, probably thinking about the times they'd laughed at Brandon's jokes or shared that edited video. Riley pushed through the crowd and hugged Maya. I'm so sorry. I should have done more to help you. You were the only one who did help, Maya said quietly. You were there when no one else was. As they walked to Vin's car, Maya felt strange. Exposed but also lighter. The secret was out. Everyone knew who she was now. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. You okay? Vin asked as they reached the parking lot. Maya thought about it. Yeah, I think I am. Good, because you're going home today. Take the day off. Tomorrow you'll come back and hold your head high. And if Brandon or anyone else gives you trouble, they'll answer to me. But more importantly, they'll answer to a school system that now has actual policies and actual consequences. Maya smiled. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. The next 2 weeks at Westfield High felt like living in a completely different school. Brandon was suspended immediately. which meant Maya could walk the hallways without that constant knot of anxiety in her stomach. But the aftermath of everything that happened was complicated in ways she hadn't expected. Some students treated her like a celebrity now. They'd whisper and point, ask for selfies, want to know what it was like having Vin Diesel as a dad. Maya found this almost as exhausting as the bullying had been. She didn't want to be famous by association. She just wanted to be herself. Other students avoided her entirely, like she was suddenly too important or too different to approach. A few of Brandon's friends glared at her in the hallways, though they were smart enough not to say anything. The school had made it very clear that any retaliation would result in immediate expulsion. But there was a third group that surprised Maya the most. Students she'd never spoken to started approaching her with their own stories. A freshman named Tyler told her about being bullied by older students in the locker room. A girl named Kendra shared how she'd been harassed online for months and felt too scared to report it. A quiet kid named David admitted he'd watched Brandon bully Maya and felt ashamed he hadn't spoken up. "I wanted to say something," David told her one day after class. "But Brandon and his friends, they run this school. Or they did. I was scared I'd become their next target." Maya understood that fear completely. "It's okay. I get it." "No, it's not okay," David said firmly. "I should have been braver. We all should have been." That conversation stuck with Maya. She realized that Brandon's behavior hadn't just hurt her. It had created a culture of fear throughout the school, where good people stayed silent because speaking up felt too dangerous. And she started to wonder if there was a way to change that. She brought the idea to Mrs. Patterson, who had become an unexpected ally. "What if we started some kind of support group for students who've experienced bullying or who want to help prevent it?" Mrs. Patterson's eyes lit up. "I think that's a wonderful idea. Let me talk to Principal Davis." Within a week, they had approval to start a peer support group. Maya, Riley, and a few other students met twice a week after school. They shared experiences, discussed ways to recognize bullying, and talked about how to support each other. Word spread and more students joined. By the third meeting, they had over 20 people. Meanwhile, the school district was implementing the new anti-bullying policies. There were assemblies about respect and inclusion. Teachers received training on recognizing and addressing harassment. Anonymous reporting systems were set up. The school hired an additional counselor specifically to handle bullying complaints. It wasn't perfect. Some students rolled their eyes at the assemblies. Some teachers went through the training but didn't seem to take it seriously. But it was something. It was more than had existed before. Brandon returned to school after his 2-week suspension on a cold November morning. Maya saw him in the hallway between second and third period. He looked different. His usual confident swagger was gone. He walked with his head down, hands shoved in his pockets, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Their eyes met for just a second, and Brandon quickly looked away. Maya felt a strange mix of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly, but not pity either. Just a sense that justice, however imperfect, had been served. Brandon's life at school had changed dramatically. He was removed from the basketball team for the rest of the season, which had been his main source of identity and popularity. His friends, sensing that association with him was now social suicide, had quietly distanced themselves. He ate lunch alone, just like Maya had for those first few weeks. Maya noticed him watching the peer support group's poster in the hallway one afternoon. She almost walked past, but something made her stop. "You okay?" she asked. Brandon looked startled that she was talking to him. No, not really." There was an awkward silence. Maya wasn't sure what to say. This was the person who'd made her life miserable for weeks. But he also looked genuinely lost. "The counseling I'm doing," Brandon said quietly, not quite meeting her eyes. "It's making me think about a lot of stuff. About why I acted the way I did. About the things I said to you." Maya waited, not making it easy for him. "I need to apologize. I mean really apologize, not just because the lawyer said I had to." Brandon finally looked at her. "What I did to you was wrong. It was racist and cruel, and there's no excuse for it. I can't take it back, but I'm sorry. Genuinely sorry." Maya studied his face, trying to figure out if he meant it. She'd heard plenty of fake apologies in her life. The kind people gave because they had to, not because they wanted to. But Brandon looked uncomfortable in a way that felt real, like he was facing something about himself that he didn't like. "Why did you target me?" Maya asked. From day one, before I even did anything. Brandon was quiet for a moment. Honestly? Because you seemed confident. You walked into that English class and answered that question like you belonged there. And I guess some part of me felt threatened by that. Which is messed up, I know. That's really messed up, Maya agreed. I'm working on it. The therapist says I have issues with control and ego and a bunch of other stuff. Apparently putting other people down was how I made myself feel powerful. He shook his head. I never thought about what it was doing to you. I didn't think about you as a real person with real feelings. And that's on me. Maya didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to tell him his apology didn't fix anything. That words couldn't undo the weeks of anxiety and fear and humiliation, but another part of her recognized that admitting fault, really admitting it, was hard, and maybe it was a start. I appreciate you saying that, she finally said. But you need to understand you don't get to just apologize and have everything go back to normal. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship or anything like that. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did was wrong, and I'm trying to be better. Maya nodded. Okay, good luck with that. She walked away, leaving Brandon standing in the hallway. She didn't feel closure exactly, but she felt something shift. The power dynamic had completely reversed. Brandon was no longer the one in control. He was facing consequences and, it seemed, actually grappling with his behavior. Over the following weeks, Maya watched Brandon from a distance. He kept his head down, attended his counseling sessions, and started volunteering at a community center as part of his required community service. She heard he was working with younger kids, helping them with homework and sports. One day, Mrs. Patterson pulled Maya aside after English class. I wanted you to know that Brandon asked if he could attend the peer support group. Not as a member seeking support, but to share his story, to talk about how he became a bully and what he's learning in therapy. Maya was surprised. What do you think? I think it's your call. This is your group as much as anyone's. If having him there would make you or others uncomfortable, we can say no. Maya thought about it for a long time. Finally, she said, let him come. But not yet. Maybe in a few months. After he's done more work on himself, and after we've built a stronger foundation for the group. That's very mature of you, Mrs. Patterson said. Maya shrugged. I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it because if he can actually change, if he can share his story and help other potential bullies understand what they're doing, then maybe something good comes out of all this. The school year continued. Maya's grades stayed strong. She made real friends, people who liked her for who she was. The peer support group grew and expanded, eventually working with the administration to revise the student handbook and create better reporting procedures. Brandon stayed in therapy and continued his community service. He wasn't popular anymore, but he seemed okay with that. Maya would occasionally see him in the hallway, and they'd exchange brief nods. Not friendship, but acknowledgement. Two people who'd been on opposite sides of a painful situation, both trying to move forward. The fake Instagram accounts disappeared. The whispers and stares faded. Slowly, Maya stopped being Vin Diesel's daughter who got bullied, and started just being Maya. A student, a friend, a person with her own identity. Her father checked in regularly, always making sure she felt safe and supported. But he also respected her independence, understanding that she needed to navigate her own path. One evening at dinner, Maya told him about Brandon's apology and his request to speak at the support group eventually. What do you think about it? Finn asked. I think people can change if they really want to. I don't know if Brandon will, but he seems to be trying. And I think there's value in showing other students what consequences look like and what real accountability means. Vin smiled. You're wise beyond your years, you know that? I learned from the best, Maya said. Things weren't perfect. There were still bad days, still moments when Maya remembered how scared and alone she'd felt in that parking lot. But there were also good days. Days when she laughed with friends, aced a test, or helped another student find the courage to report their own bully. The experience had changed her, but not in the way Brandon had intended. Instead of making her small, it had made her stronger. It had given her purpose, and it had taught her that standing up for yourself wasn't just about being brave in the moment. It was about knowing when to fight, when to ask for help, and when to use your voice to help others find theirs. Spring arrived at Westfield High with cherry blossoms blooming along the pathway to the main entrance. Maya stood looking at them one morning, amazed at how different she felt compared to that first day back in September. 6 months had passed since the confrontation in the principal's office, and the school had transformed in ways both big and small. The peer support group now had over 40 members. They'd helped a dozen students report bullying situations, and the new policies actually worked. Teachers were responding faster. Administrators were taking complaints seriously. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Maya had also found her place academically. She was at the top of her English class, had joined the debate team, and was already thinking about college applications next year. Riley had become her best friend, the kind of person who showed up without being asked when things got hard. But the most surprising change involved Brandon. 3 months after his suspension, he'd approached Maya again. This time with a specific request. He wanted to share his story with the peer support group. Not to make excuses or seek sympathy, but to talk honestly about how he'd become a bully and what he was learning about himself. Maya had discussed it with the group members. Some were hesitant. Others thought it could be valuable. Finally, they agreed to let him speak, with the condition that he'd answer any questions honestly, and that Maya could stop the session at any time if it became uncomfortable. The meeting was held on a Wednesday afternoon. 23 students showed up, more than usual. Word had spread that Brandon Mitchell was going to talk about his experience. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because they needed to hear what he had to say. Brandon stood at the front of the room looking more nervous than Maya had ever seen him. His hands were shaking slightly. Gone was the arrogant athlete who'd ruled the school. In his place was someone who looked humbled and uncertain. "I don't really know how to start," Brandon began, "except to say that I'm the reason groups like this need to exist. I spent most of last semester making this school a worse place. Specifically, I targeted Maya and made her life horrible. And I need to own that." He talked for 20 minutes, about growing up in a house where his father measured success by dominance and winning, about how he learned that putting others down made him feel bigger, about the casual racism he'd absorbed from certain friends and family members without questioning it, about how being popular and feared felt like power, but was actually just fear on his part. "The therapy I've been doing, it's made me realize I was angry about a lot of things," Brandon said. "My parents' marriage falling apart, the pressure to be perfect at basketball, feeling like I had to live up to this image. But none of that excuses what I did. Those were my problems, and I made them everyone else's problems. Especially Maya's." He looked directly at her. "You didn't deserve any of what I put you through. No one does. And I'm sorry not just for what I did, but for everyone who stayed silent and let it happen. I'm sorry for creating an environment where people were too scared to speak up." The room was completely quiet. Maya could see different emotions on different faces. Anger, skepticism, sadness, understanding. A student named Chris raised his hand. "How do we know you're not just saying all this because you got caught?" It was a fair question. Brandon nodded. "You don't know. You have no reason to trust me. All I can say is that getting caught was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I avoided worse consequences, but because it forced me to look at myself. Really look. And I didn't like what I saw." Another student, Jessica, asked, "What would you say to someone who's thinking about bullying someone else right now?" Brandon thought carefully. "I'd say that power that comes from fear isn't real power. It's hollow. When I was suspended and all my friends disappeared, I realized I'd built my whole identity on making other people afraid of me, and when that was gone, I had nothing. No real friendships. No self-respect. Just shame and regret." The session lasted an hour. Students asked hard questions, and Brandon answered them as honestly as he could. When it ended, no one applauded. This wasn't a redemption story with a neat bow, but several students came up to him afterward with their own questions, and he stayed to talk with them. Maya watched from across the room. She still didn't trust Brandon completely. Trust had to be earned over time through consistent actions, not just words, but she could see he was trying. And in a strange way, his presence in that room sent a powerful message. Even people who'd done terrible things could choose to change. Later that week, Maya was called to Principal Davis's office. For a split second, she felt that old anxiety return, but when she arrived, she found Mrs. Flores, the district superintendent, waiting with a smile. "Maya, we wanted to talk to you about something," Mrs. Flores said. "The peer support group you helped create has been so successful that we want to expand it. We're planning to implement similar programs at all the middle and high schools in the district." Principal Davis nodded enthusiastically. We'd like you to be part of the training team. You'd help other students set up their own groups, share what worked here, and be a resource as the program grows. Maya was stunned. Really? Really? What you've built here has changed this school's culture. Students feel safer. They're more willing to report problems. And perhaps most importantly, they're supporting each other. That's invaluable. Maya felt pride swell in her chest. Not because she'd gotten revenge on Brandon or because her famous father had swooped in to save her, but because she'd taken something painful and turned it into something meaningful. She'd created real change. That weekend, Vin took Maya out to their favorite restaurant to celebrate. As they sat across from each other, sharing appetizers and talking about her day, Maya realized how far they'd both come. "I'm proud of you," Vin said, "not just for handling what happened with Brandon, but for what you did afterward. You could have transferred schools. You could have let anger consume you. Instead, you chose to make things better. I learned that from you," Maya said. "You always taught me that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about protecting people who need protection and standing up for what's right. You've taught me a few things too," Vin admitted, "about patience. About giving people room to change. I wanted to destroy that kid when I found out what he'd done to you. But you showed me there was another way." The school year ended with an assembly celebrating the peer support program's success. Maya stood on stage with Riley and the other founding members. She looked out at the audience and saw Brandon sitting in the back row. He caught her eye and gave a small nod of acknowledgement. She didn't nod back, but she didn't look away either. They would never be friends. The hurt he'd caused was too deep for that. But they existed in the same space now without hostility. Two people who'd been part of a difficult story that had somehow led to positive change. In her graduation speech the following year, Maya talked about her experience without naming Brandon specifically. She talked about how pain could become purpose, how speaking up was never easy but always worth it, and how real change required both accountability and the courage to believe people could grow. "I came to this school wanting to be invisible," she said to the assembled students and families. "I thought if I just kept my head down and didn't make waves, everything would be fine. But I learned that invisibility isn't safety. Silence isn't peace. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be invisible. Sometimes you have to make waves." In the audience, Vin watched his daughter with tears in his eyes. The scared girl who'd come to him in the middle of the night had become a confident young woman with a voice and a purpose. Brandon was in the audience too, preparing to start his senior year while Maya headed off to college. He'd continued his therapy, maintained his community service, and slowly rebuilt a version of himself that didn't rely on tearing others down. He still had work to do. Probably would for a long time. But he was doing it. After the ceremony, several younger students approached Maya with their own stories of bullying. She listened to each one, offered advice, and connected them with the support group. She realized that her work wasn't done. It might never be fully done. But that was okay. Creating change wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about showing up day after day and refusing to accept cruelty as normal. As Maya packed up her things to leave Westfield High for the last time, she walked past the hallway where Brandon had first harassed her. The memory didn't sting the way it once had. It was still there, still real, but it no longer defined her. She thought about that scared 15-year-old girl picking up her scattered books while students walked past. She wished she could tell that girl that everything would be okay, that speaking up was the right choice, that pain wouldn't last forever. But the strength she gained from surviving it would. Maya walked out the front doors into bright summer sunshine. Her father was waiting by the car, ready to take her home. Tomorrow she'd start preparing for college. But today she let herself feel proud of everything she'd accomplished and everyone she'd helped along the way. The story that had started with harassment and fear had ended with growth, change, and hope. Not a perfect ending, but a real one. And sometimes that was enough.